In visiting the 110 dioceses which existed when I started in office, and I think about 25 of the provinces of the Anglican Communion, my sense is that people of faith in all of those contexts are getting on with loving Jesus and trying to love their neighbors as themselves. Things get in the way, normal human spiritual challenges of, me first, or I'd rather be angry about this than find a creative way through it. But long term, I think most people remember that they are beloved of God, and their role in this world is to find a way to produce a place of greater peace and harmony. I see hope wherever people are trying something new and creative to respond to the needs of their neighbors. Whether it's feeding people in a soup kitchen or a shared meal in a parish congregational setting, or advocating with a legislature about producing a legal system that is more welcoming to all God's people and that ensures greater fairness and equity in this world. I've seen the presence of God in, children hungry for communion, people in hospitals grateful for the service that's offered there, the healing possibility. I've seen God in the faces of Palestinians and Israelis trying to find ways to build a more peaceful society. I see hope in the presence of God wherever people are vulnerable enough to recognize both their own need and the need of their neighbors. I said in my message to the church last week that I thought we were beyond the conflict that marked the beginning of my term in office. Episcopalians were fighting with one another all over the place about their understanding of what it means to be a human being and who can be included in that understanding of a normative human being. It has a great deal to do with whether people recognize that sexual orientation occurs across a spectrum and that it's not solely binary and it's not just male and female and that's the end of it, but it's far more complex than that. It's been a challenge, it still is a challenge in some places, for people to understand the complexity of that part of human existence. The conflict comes when some people decide that one sort of human being is okay and welcome in this community and another sort of human being is not. That's, I think, probably the deepest definition of sin. We decide that some people aren't made in the image of God. We're all made in the image of God. I think we began to get beyond it as we recognized the pain that is shared across the spectrum of humanity because of who we are and the world we live in. I saw it very early on in the response to Katrina. People from, theologically orthodox conservative congregations and people from more progressive ones were down there mucking out people's houses. And when they were focused on somebody else and the needs of somebody else, they suddenly realized that they had way more in common than the few things they disagreed about. I think that ability to be called out of ourselves is always the route to healing those kinds of conflicts that are so focused on self and inwardness. This church is healed by turning outward, by remembering that our task is to love our neighbors and not just the people who sit in the pews with us. People often talk about the fact that I'm the first woman elected as a primate in the Anglican Communion. The sad reality is that I think that some people are afraid of women in leadership. Some people are simply not used to it and have never imagined it, and so it's therefore a cognitive challenge. When I went to the first primates meeting in Dar es Salaam, I had conversations with everybody who was there. They weren't always deep conversations, but we talked. All of us talked to one another. Confronted with the incarnate reality of another human being, most of us can find constructive ways of conversing with one another, building some kind of bridge. But if we stay away from that kind of encounter, if we say, well, I will not sit down with that person, there's no possibility of that. The great unfortunate reality is that when we only do our communicating on the internet or at a distance, we lose that opportunity for conversion, which is what conversation is able to produce. I delight in the fact that Episcopalians across this church know more about one another, that more Episcopalians understand our diversity, that we're multinational and multilingual and multicultural everywhere, even if they hadn't noticed before. I rejoice in the fact that people are beginning to understand that we're present in Europe and in Latin America and in Asia and the Pacific, as well as in the United States. I delight in the fact that more and more congregations and dioceses are building relationships across the world, that those relationships are deepening our understanding of what it's like to be a Christian or a person of faith in another context. I delight in the fact that we have turned outward in most places, that we're not just focused on our internal conflicts. That's the route of death, to be turned inward on your conflict, because it doesn't lead to new life. What does the reign of God look like when it actually happens? Well, it's a central part of our prayer. Your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. My understanding of that is a society of peace, and it's peaceful because there's justice, because nobody lives in want, nobody has too much, everybody has not just the bare minimum, but enough for a feast. And those are the kinds of images that the biblical prophets hold up over and over again. Isaiah's vision of a great picnic on the mountainside with good food and good wine and rest and time for leisure, the true understanding of Sabbath that's recreative, that's a taste of the Garden of Eden that we understood was the intent for the whole of creation. We see glimpses of it in this life, particularly when social ills are remedied, when we address the scandal of discrimination against young people of color that we're noticing finally in this country, when we're engaged in relieving the refugee challenges in Europe at the moment and in Central America, when we're helping handicapped children in Haiti to lead productive lives. Those are signs of the reign of God among us and around us. The biblical images that I think undergird my spiritual understanding are those great visions of what the world ought to look like, the great prophetic images about justice and peace. Jesus, in his first act of public ministry, goes to the synagogue in Nazareth and reads from Isaiah 61 about being anointed to bring good news to the poor and healing to the blind and release to the prisoner and the captive. And then he says, today this has been fulfilled in your hearing. It is, if at the very least, it's a reminder that at this moment that reality can be fulfilled all around us. It is when we notice that happening and when we participate in its happening. The great images about let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream, that's the basic human yearning for reconnection with all that is holy, all that is right and possible in this world. And I can think of nothing that's more central to it than the reconnection with God that we understand through Jesus Christ. What have my prayers been in this season? That I might be fully present in each encounter, looking for the image of God in the conversation partners and the people I meet, that I might be a breath of peace rather than increasing the level of conflict, that I might hold out a vision that is hopeful and possible in this world. What's next for me is still somewhat up in the air. I'm going to go and teach at Virginia Seminary in the spring semester. I'm going to teach a course on religion and science and one on the spirituality of peacemaking, and hope that that is a fruitful time of discernment for the next chapter. I'm immensely grateful for the people I've been able to work with over these 9 years. The staff of the Domestic and Foreign Missionary Society are gifted, passionate people who are helping to change this world into something that looks more like the reign of God. They do it by partnering with Episcopalians and Anglicans and people of faith across this country and across the globe. And I'm just enormously grateful for that privilege.